Tell him to let him tell that man. I said, he thought they were having him this big book. He said, I want to let him talk to him so he can make them tell him.
Time limit, too. Hopefully on the 6 months. Hopefully on the 6 month trial.
What you talking about? This right here?
No, him right there.
Like a dude.
I got it.
Not the way he's treated everybody.
Well, we
We had talked about it.
2 hours.
Oh, yeah, that's. Yeah, the motions, how can you vote?
Just say yes.
Oh.
Just say yes. Yeah.
I've got 6 o'clock, that'd be slow.
I'd like to call this study session to order. And we'd like to add an item, an option to renew paving bid. Just want to let you know that before we get started. It will be on later on in the agenda. I'll ask at this time, the state has asked us to have public comments at every one of our meetings. If anyone has a public comment from the public, please step to the microphone. I think there's a sign-up sheet there, and we'll be glad to listen to you. Anyone?
I actually have a sign-up sheet, Mayor, Michael Sharp.
All right, Michael.
If you'll come forward, please. And if anybody would like to speak on the added item, we'll ask for that at the end when we've gone through the ones that signed up.
Good evening, Michael.
Look,
Mr. Sharp, you have 3 minutes.
yes, ma'am. I understand I was told this is where I need to bring this topic to. I'm gonna be quick. In a little before August 23rd, 2015, August 23rd, 2015, it's actually when the flume collapsed, if you remember that. A few months before that, I have a ditch that was dug on and brought down below the culvert line, which starts backing up water on my property at 120 Church Street. Since then, I've contacted Mark Planton, not too long after the flume collapsed, in which he told me there was bigger fish to fry, basically, at that point, which that's fine. I understood. I didn't create a problem with it. Since then, after about a year or so, or a year after the flume was corrected, Mark had left. I contacted, talked to his replacement. Since then, I've talked to the city manager before Ms. Boyette. I talked to the city manager before Mr. Collins. I talked to the interim city manager, and now I've talked to Scott Collins. The interim city manager actually seemed to get me farther with questions. But we got to a question of whether the city even owned that ditch, and that would be then private property, in which it's my problem to take care of, in which I answered back, well, if it was my problem to deal with because it's my property, then why is the city on my property without permission? They cut a ditch down too deep. It's about that deep, was about that deep below the culvert, backing water up on the property, on my property. On the street behind it, in which other residents are getting water. There's one house back there that I understand even has a water line in our house. I've asked for it to be corrected. Drive by there and look at it. Used to, the residents could mow through there and weed eat. Now it does nothing but collect water and mosquitoes. I don't know where else to go with this. I've tried to be patient. It's been since 2015. And I've tried to just talk to different people about it to see if I could get it fixed, in which I get nowhere. This is where I'm at. So that's all I've got. September 2021, I was warned about my tall grass back there and how the city would impose the fine on me if I didn't get it mowed, which I'd actually been on vacation and it had been raining before I left. When I came back, it was still raining. This timing, But anyways, the only point there is, it seems like when the city decides we're gonna do something, we're gonna throw it to you. But then when the taxpayer asks to do something about it, it seems like we get nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Thank you for your patience.
The next speaker is Joanne Bassel. Ms. Bassel, you have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, yes, my name's Joanne Bassel. I'm a leader with the Bedford County Listening Project here in Shelbyville. And the reason why I'm here today is because you may or may not be aware, we've actually been running a survey of renters in Shelbyville so that we can get an idea of the issues that renters are facing. We've actually done one of these surveys before. Didn't get a lot of headway with it, so we're doing another one to see what exactly the issues that renters are facing, how the state of rental housing in Shelbyville is impacting them, especially with the cost of rent and how expensive everything is. Our survey period is coming to an end. We expect to finish collecting surveys about mid-August. And then at the end of August, August 26th, that's a Saturday, we will be holding a public hearing on the square. It'll be from 10 to 12 a.m. And I'm here today to formally invite all of the members of City Council to attend the hearing, along with Lisa, if she would like to come, Scott Collins, Mayor Carroll, and Ginger Schaffner as well. You guys are all invited to be at our public hearing. I have formal invitations, which I would like to be able to hand to you guys at the end of the meeting, so I'll come and find you all at the end. But it would be really great if you could all attend. We've got some great feedback from renters here, lots of very personal comments about how the issues with housing have greatly affected their lives and their children's lives, and it's really important. So I hope we can see you there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that's all that has signed up. If anybody would like to speak on the added issue, which was the option to renew the paving bid, come forward. Mr. Mayor, I see no other speakers. We can move on into our agenda.
Okay. We'll close public comments this time and start with our discussion items. And the number one discussion item is the historical marker. And I have Mr. Ross listed, Blair Ross, and also Scott, our city manager. Mr. Ross?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time. I'm Blair Ross. I'm a representative of the project officer for the Bedford County United Veterans Council, which combines and sort of represents the efforts of the Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. What was presented and should be part of your study materials, a letter that I provided to Mr. Collins that summarizes the initiative we've taken to dedicate a historical marker commemorating the winning of the Medal of Honor right in the Shelbyville Public Square by a Union Army captain who led a cavalry charge through the square. And all the details are summarized in the letter. I won't go through all of those right now, interest of your time. We initially coordinated this effort through the county and the County Historical Commission and got their endorsement, then submitted the application to the state. The State Historical Commission has approved it, worked with us on the text for the marker and everything like that. The Veterans Council endorsed the effort and underwrote the costs associated with this. Then when all that was approved and the marker was produced, and I came back to coordinate with the county for the actual installation and dedication, it was determined that the desired location's actually on a city sidewalk across the street from the courthouse property. And so this is a city matter that we need the city's permission to be able to install it. The exact location where we want to put the marker is described on a map that's included with the material that I provided to Scott. It's right in front of the little public gardens located between the law firm and the Pope's Cafe. We want it placed on the sidewalk, or not for people driving by, but for people walking around the square to be able to see and look at that. And it's a well-positioned vantage. You can get a good view right up north or down North Main Street where this charge took place. And it's right about where the Confederate defenders were behind their barricades defending it. I'd be glad to answer any other questions about the background and the context. Some of that's included in the letter. But in summary, not many towns can claim they had a Medal of Honor won right downtown, as opposed to have a Medal of Honor winner from the community. And we feel it's a worthy recognition of Shelbyville's role in the Civil War. There was a little article a couple weeks ago in the paper about it. Much of Shelbyville's involvement in the wars were shadowed by the big Gettysburg and Vicksburg campaigns that took place in the same time. Again, I'm glad to answer any questions, but the veterans community that sponsored this thought that this would be, a appropriate addition to Shelbyville's downtown renovation effort in commemorating, adding to the storied legacy of their town. In terms of timing of this, we will coordinate for the dedication in conjunction with the Veterans Day parade activities. I've coordinated with Mr. Mike Roos, our Veteran Service Officer, who normally coordinates that with the police. There's no additional funding required. The state will install it. They just have to coordinate with the town to do that. And we want to do it in conjunction with already, the route closures and everything associated with the Veterans Day parade for minimal disruption or impact on activities downtown. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Council, you have any questions? Scott, do you have any comments? Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you, sir.
All right, the next item is the flood pump update. And we'll ask Mr. Will Owen to come forward, please. Good evening, Will.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you guys for having me tonight. Don't get too overwhelmed. I prepared a very short presentation, but can dive in as deep as you guys want to tonight. Would gladly talk about this report for an hour or longer. If anyone wants to.
Thank you.
I'm excited about it. So that's where I stand. But I understand you guys have a number of things to look at tonight. What we have generated is not just a flood pump report. When we got into kind of compiling the information that was necessary to provide you with a document, a decision-making document, we were able to put together a single source reference document for all things that we've entitled the Flood Protection System. That's three primary parts: the flume tubes and their collection, the pumping system, the pumps themselves, and the intake structure and the discharge as far as that goes. I won't get into a lot of the history, but we were able to, the first few pages, we were able to locate a couple of interesting documents that I had not seen before. One was a little excerpt from the 1948 flood that presented itself in the 1958 TVA annual report. And there's a picture there along with a caption of some of the events that took place in the 1948 flood. There was also a rather lengthy review of the Big Springs Urban Renewal Project, which is the project that was undertaken that involved the initial installation of the flume and the pumps. That was in a 1967 U.S. Congressional House hearing of the Select Committee of Small Business, and it goes through a pretty lengthy description of kind of the reasoning and the costs at that time, which were interesting to see as well. Total cost of the project in 1961 was when it was installed was somewhere in the neighborhood, I believe, around $8 million. That included a significant acquisition of property and also some pretty significant water and sanitary sewer utility installations. Moving on, we get into, on page 6, we get into describing the existing system. The flume piping network has three tubes, tube A, tube B, and tube C. On page 6 is the inlet to a picture of the inlet to tube A. That's back behind the old Eckerd's building there that most everyone's familiar with. It's the largest and the longest of the tubes, measuring around a little over 18 feet wide and almost 12 feet tall, running around a little over 3,000 feet long. A portion of that does convert to a 15-foot round corrugated metal structure as it approaches the levee. Tube B is the shortest of the 3 tubes, and it actually connects into tube A. Its inlet location is pictured there on page 7. It is in the Regions Bank parking lot, sitting behind the building. It is flush mounted with the parking lot there. Tube C is the smallest. It's also a corrugated metal pipe arch, around 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall approximately. And its inlet location is behind Thomas Magnet School, between Tate Avenue and Court Drive. Real quickly, if you'll go to the first pullout, the 11 by 17 pullout, and describing as quickly as I can the way the system works. So all of the area in yellow, which is, I believe, a little over around 865 acres. The entire area that is highlighted in yellow drains to the inlet of tube A. That includes areas such as where we are today, the rec center and the park, the celebration grounds, and runs just west of Fairfield Pike, but not all the way over to North Main. And then runs as far south as Madison Street and a little bit south of that between East Lane and Madison. The blue area, the light blue area, is what all drains into the tube B inlet, and it runs on the north end from North-South Professional Drive, all of Main Street, south of there, and then all the way west to Old Nashville Dirt Road. The green area is tube C, and it is approximately 280 acres. Tube B drainage basin is 470 acres. The tube C, the green there, all drains, like I said, to the inlet there behind Thomas School. And it involves the west side of Old Nashville Dirt Road all the way over to 41 Union Street. The red area is the entire area that drains to the levee, to where the flood pumps are. There is nothing, this is a common misconception, there is nothing in the red area that drains into the flumes. Once water enters the flume at the 3 inlets, no other water is introduced into the flume. So the flume only drains the areas that are north of it and drain into those inlets. Everything south of the flume inlets in the red location all has stormwater infrastructure, but none of it is connected to the flume tubes. It is all draining to the levee and flood pump area. Under normal conditions, normal flow conditions, the flow in the red that gets to the pump basin is what I'm calling it, flows through the pump structure. There are two low flow gates, and I'll show you pictures of those, through the pump structure into tube A, right prior to it discharging into the Duck River. So under normal flow conditions, everything in the red makes its way to the Duck River via the levee or the pump basin. What happens to cause this system to be exercised? There's two primary activities that occur. I believe in Appendix C, I believe, you don't have to go there, but you can read that at your leisure. Appendix C is a description of the city's current practices when there is an anticipated flood event that might result in the pumps needing to be turned on and the floodgates raised. In talking with Chief Doak, I wanted to capture what the current practices are and the protocols are. And so that's described in that appendix. You will find it is extremely manual oriented based on visual observations. So boots on the ground are required to observe a handful of areas within the city and constantly evolving communications to determine if the low flow gates need to be closed and the pumps turned on. The two broad events that occur that would be reason to close the gates and turn the pumps on. A regional event that happens in the Normandy drainage area. So what happens, the Duck River, when it rises, it's usually a result of the release rate at Normandy Dam. So if there's a very large storm event that drains to Normandy Reservoir, but Chevrolet never sees a drop of water, it still could be reason for the low flow pump gates to close and the pumps to turn on, because when those gates stay open and the duck rises, water backs into the levee through those gates. Not into the levee, excuse me, into the reservoir. Therefore, it takes the capacity, the storage capacity of that reservoir. So if there is a storm front that is coming through the Normandy area and on its way to Shelbyville, the chief has to make some determinations on when and how fast do I close those gates to preserve storage area for the drainage basin in red and not for the Duck River backwaters. So that's the regional event that occurs. The localized event, rainfall that occurs in the red area as well as the flume inlet areas, what can happen is if there's a large rainfall event that requires the pump basin to receive a lot of water and therefore put a lot of water into tube A through the low flow gates, that's taking up capacity in the flume in the tubes for the yellow, blue, and green areas that are trying to also drain to the duck. So what happens there is the chief and his staff make a decision to close the low flow gates so that they take off the discharge that's going into tube A from the pump basin and free that capacity up for the upstream areas draining into the tubes. So those are the two primary actions that occur that cause the system to be turned on, if you will. I won't go into all the components. There's very solid descriptions of everything. You currently have, well, as you know, the system has served the city well with the exception of the 3 failures. 2009, 2015, 2018. There's an appendices that shows the location and the links of those failures. All three failures were in Tube A. Public Works has, I guess, developed a more reliable review and inspection of the tubes, not just on visual observations through regular inspections and walking of the flume, but they have coordinated regular LiDAR measurements that are flown by a drone through the interior of the flume, and it's measuring the circumference as it's flying through there. We take those measurements and we compare them to each other each time. So that helps us to see where movement or deformations are occurring, and we can identify those and go take a look, see what's going on. To date, we have not identified any significant movement or deformations since we've started that program 2 years ago. Are you flying it once a year?
We missed last year, so we have it 2 years now.
Real quickly, I'll get into, hey, if you can go to the old plan sheet. Or is it on? Yes. Okay. So this one. Out. Or no. That. So if you'll move on to the third 11 by 17 full out, it gives you a little more close-up view of the levee system and the pumps. And this is from the as-built plans from 1961. What we've done is we've added some information there and color-coded it to correspond with the image that was just up there. Does anybody have any questions on the existing system? What is involved in it? How it works? Anything like that? If not, I'll move into the nuts and bolts. All right. The primary focus of our recommendations were the pump system as a whole. So that includes the intake structure, the concrete and steel structure, as well as the pumps themselves. We also looked at, in coordination with that, we understood that the two flume segments that traverse underneath the levee are critical. Obviously, if there's a failure in any of those segments under the levee's compromised, and therefore we're in some serious trouble. So we included that in our recommendations on this in our review. If you'll go to page 22 is where we start with the recommendations. As far as the flume goes, we looked at three alternatives. One was replacement, just in kind. The second one was lining the flume with a fabricated steel shaft, if you will. And the third was shotcrete spot repairs. Based on the cost limitations and some significant construction challenges to those first two, replacement and lining, neither one of those are recommended. The obviously replacement of the flume segment under the levee, that's just not feasible. We would not want to introduce new construction or disruption to that levee. Lining would require some significant excavation. They would come in 10-foot segments. You would have to have entry shafts that would be excavated to get those segments into the pipe. And even then, walking them down the existing pipe and welding them into place. That would also reduce some of your flow capacity because obviously you result in a smaller diameter pipe with the liner. So the spot repairs are what's recommended. As a whole, this segment, these two segments, tube C goes under the levee and tube A goes under the levee. Both segments are in good working order. There is no imminent threat of failure that we are aware of or have observed. There is some degradation along the floor of that pipe, those pipes. As you would expect, that's where the most water flows the most amount of time, pretty much continuously. So there has been some rusting of the ridges and the corrugations, some bolt losses, and some infiltration of groundwater. So those areas that have been observed we would develop a engineered solution with using shotcrete spot repairs and do so in a much more economical way than lining or replacing. The pump system itself, two components, the pumps and then the intake structure. So on page 24, the pumps that are there now are severely aged, and over in the conditions part of the report, you can read some of the more specifics. But without getting into that, it's my assumption that everyone's in agreement that the reliability and the cost to maintain them have gotten to the point now where replacement is the solution. That's our recommendation. We would recommend that you replace all three pumps. In conjunction with that, we also recommend replacing the electrical service. Currently, those pumps are direct line voltage, 2300 volts, with no soft starters or anything. So Jared Dickens at Sherwood Power can attest to when that pump button's pushed to turn on, we're holding our breath that the rest of the town stays energized, if you will. So we would recommend that the electrical system be replaced and drop down to a standard 480 volt. We would have a housing structure there on the levee of some sort. Probably our recommendation is a masonry built on-site structure that would house all the new electrical equipment, as well as the pump starters and the controls, automated controls, which is item C on page 25, monitoring control system. As previously mentioned, currently your staff, your fire department personnel, and public works as support during events, it is very resource heavy. To consider taking action to engage the system now takes almost a third of your active shift fire department. So that takes them away from responding to emergencies when there's obviously a storm event going on. So a third of your active shift fire department at any given time, 4 to 5 firemen are required or necessary to manually operate and oversee the system currently. As such, we would recommend that you look at installing monitoring and control system through a SCADA system. That would allow us and your staff to operate the pumps, operate the low flow gates, monitor them, monitor the water levels, be able to have high water alarms. There's just a complete ability to monitor and control the system from remotely from an iPad or a telephone or a cell phone or from a computer interface. Moving on to the intake structure itself, some good news. We had the structure structurally evaluated by a team member of ours, EMC Structural Engineering out of Nashville. They have deemed the structure suitable for retrofitting. So we do not have to, or we're not recommending that you build a new structure to house the new pumps. The new structure can be retrofitted There are some action items that need to occur with that structure to kind of, I guess, extend its life from what it currently is. Primarily, it's sandblasting the existing coating that's on the concrete and putting new epoxy-based coating on it, repairing some of your grading, your platform grading, and improving some of the access routes, the handrails and the steps that are there to bring them up to current code. Also, in the intake structure, we recommend that the bar screen that protects the pumps from trash and debris, large trash and debris. There have been some sections that have been compromised, not to any great degree, but while we're in there doing this work, it is recommended that we repair the bar screen areas that are deformed. The low flow sluice gates, we would recommend, they are in good order themselves. The iron gates themselves and the frames are in good order. However, we do recommend that we would replace all the seals. They are not watertight. Is that correct, Chief? Okay. They are not watertight. They do their best to keep up now when they're closed. So we would recommend replacing all the seals and gaskets, as well as replacing the actuator and the motors, so that they can be brought into the remote monitoring and control system. And then lastly, the discharge piping. Again, the whole system is described with pictures earlier in the report, but in the effort of trying to save time. The discharge piping is 42-inch diameter steel piping. It does need some recoating, if you will, but generally it's in good order considering it's 60 plus years old. The levee and the floodgate was not necessarily a part of our review, but in compiling all of this information, we did have two suggestions there. That's on page 27. As best we can tell, the levee appears to be structurally stable. However, it is difficult to make visual observations on the Duck River side because of the vegetation. It does not appear that any of the large diameter vegetation has intruded to any great degree from a root system standpoint. But again, that's just visual observations. We would recommend at some point, as budgets and time allows, that you look into some non-invasive exploration of the levee to make sure that its core is still in good condition. And then the last thing is there have been over the years some piecemeal is not a fair term. There have been upgrades or repairs made to the floodgate itself, and that's the gate that's on South Cannon. The new cables have been installed within the last 2 years, and some protections from trash and debris getting down into the pit where the gate's stored have been added. The hydraulic pump and pistons is still original. They are operational and have proven to be fairly reliable, but they also have a service life to them. So we would recommend, as budgets allow, that those components be replaced at some point when that opportunity presents itself. All right, page 28. This is our opinion of probable cost for the recommended repairs based on the system that we've described. Again, this is only relegated to the flume tubes that are under the levee. So it's approximately about 800 linear feet of flume. So this does not pertain to the remainder of the collection tubes out into the system. Total cost is a little over $5.25 million, so $5,330,000. You'll see that what we're here tonight for specifically is the pumps, motors, and VFD starters. So that's item 1A. Those total a little over 2.6 million or 2.7 million exactly. Pumps being approximately $750,000 a piece, and the VFD starters being $150,000. You see some remaining or the actual engineering design, construction admin and inspection costs, and then a contingency amount that we've added for unknowns for a total estimated project cost of a little over $6.8 million. Page 29, and we can come back to any of this that we want to. This is how we're recommending that we phase the project. Phase 1 is to go ahead within the next 2 weeks and finalize technical specifications and contract documents for the pumps and the variable frequency drives, the VFD starters. What the VFDs do, it allows the pumps to, in layman's terms, we can, kind of like a ceiling fan, you've got different speeds that you can go, right? So the VFDs allow those motors to run at the speed that the demand is calling for. So it's life-saving or extending the shelf life of those pumps. Right now, the only options for those existing pumps are on at full bore or off. There's no in between. So the VFDs are highly recommended for the recommended 450 horsepower pumps that we're calling for. We would recommend that phase 1 include, again, developing technical plans or technical specification contract documents, advertise those for bid, secure that contract. It's a pre-procurement. You're pre-procuring those 2 equipment items because of the lead time it takes to manufacture. Lead times have been expressed to us anywhere from 10 to 14 months. So the idea is we accelerate the pumps and the VFDs, get those bid, get them under contract, get them in manufacturing. While they are in manufacturing in that 10 to 14 months, phase 2 will begin design, and the phase 2 is all the other repairs, the retrofitting of the structure, the bar screens, the electrical, the monitoring controls, the design of the shotcrete spot repairs, all of that would be developed. Specific engineering plans specifications would be developed while the pumps and the VFDs are being manufactured, so that the intent would be we bid that work in such a manner that we have a contract, or you have a contractor in place ready to go when the pumps are being shipped to the city. So, and then page 30 is kind of a rundown of the total timeline. We'd be looking at probably April of 2025 to start construction, full construction, with a completion of November 2025. We could do that earlier, but it's not recommended, and here's why. We don't want to be exposed without any flood pumps in that February and March timeframe. So knowing that the pumps won't be ready by March, April of 2024, then our next target construction period would be that same time in 2025. The only other thing I'll mention, and then I'll take questions. There is some inherent risk. The way the current pumps are and the proposed pumps, it is impossible to just install one pump at a time while leaving the existing pumps in place, primarily because of electrical service. So there will be a period of time when those existing pumps are removed and taken offline. There will be a period of time of exposure for the town, for the city. We will explore that exposure and how best to mediate that when we develop the design plans for phase 2. Right now, We have had preliminary discussions in the past with temporary emergency pumping. So in essence, they would be trailer mounted. And I don't mean like little ATV trailer, large trailer mounted pumps, portable pumps that would be brought to the site or be available to be brought to the site within 24 hours, 48 hours, something of that nature. And so we could pump out of that levee or that pump well if we needed to. And then I'm done. So I know that that was a lot and a lot of information. I plan on being here for the council meeting. If you guys want to have this as an agenda item, I'd be glad to answer questions after you've had more time to dive into the report. But as of now, my recommendation would be, let's hit the ground running, finish. We've been able to, the one thing I didn't highlight in the cost proposal, we've been able to gather enough information that we have the technical specs and most of the contract documents for the pumps and VFDs. So there's no additional charge for us to develop those and to go to advertising a bid. We're going to be able to do that with the information we have, and we can do that within a couple of weeks.
Any questions? I think we've been working on this since about November or December when I took off. Yeah. Good. Very good presentation, Will. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is parking on the square, and I'll ask Scott to enlighten us on that, and he may ask Ginger to join him on that. Scott?
Yes, sir. We've had business owner. We've had a business owner approach us about parking issues on the square. Recently, staff had a meeting to discuss what was done in the past. And there's been some changes in the law that makes it more challenging to enforce parking limits on the square, as was done in the past. And with that said, Mayor, I'd like to turn it over to our city attorney at this time.
Thank you. I sent you all a memo out today via email that told a little bit about what happened in 2019. It is a federal ruling from the 16th Circuit Court. Tennessee is in that particular jurisdiction, so that law is good here in Tennessee. Basically what it says, and this is how, and I don't know how long Chief Phillips might be able to tell you how long the city's been doing this, but there used to be, I believe, a 2-hour parking limit on the square, and how that was enforced was that you had an employee of the police department that would go around and mark the tires. In essence, in 2019, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals determined that making that mark on the tire was actually a search under what we consider the 14th Amendment search federal protection that we have under the Constitution, unreasonable search and seizures. That was a Michigan, it actually came out of Saginaw, Michigan, and what the case, or at least in that case, what they determined is that the city of Saginaw was not able to show any exception about why they should not have had a warrant. So in essence, you can't chalk tires because it's an unreasonable search upon someone's private property. So basically, really in our area as well as in other areas of the country that weren't under the Sixth Circuit, a lot of people have just stopped talking. Now, you can go back and enforce or adopt 2-hour limits if you so wish to do, but we will have to come up with a different method of enforcement. And there are other ways. There are some people that are doing they call digital chalking, that use types of cameras and digital and software that basically clocks how long people are there. from a visual standpoint without actually touching the vehicle. Of course, you could also do parking meters, you could do parking kiosks where you have to go over and actually put money in a particular kiosk. There's a variety of ways that you could do that, but we can't go back to the old method that we did with the parking, what we would call parking aid.
Thank you for that research.
At this point, we're just seeking guidance and direction, what the council wants staff to approve. I mean, we can come up with estimates on parking meters, we can do the kiosk, parking. We could perhaps even study having designated parking spots for a certain amount of time, but then you have an enforcement issue come up. So we're just seeking guidance from the council.
We are studying it. See what we can do. Okay.
I would say probably the first thing you all need to make your determination is whether you think there needs to be parking limit on the square at all.
Right, any comments from council? All right, the next item is retail recruitment, and Scott, would you fill us in on that, please?
Thank you, Mayor. We have an opportunity to do a request for qualifications on retail recruitment. Traditionally, in accordance to the purchasing policy, we don't need to bring this before council until the results come in. But after a staff meeting, it was determined to go ahead and ask if you all set the value of it. What this would entail would be to ask vendors to apply, providing their qualifications and experience in retail recruitment, and to work with city staff and others, doing linkage reports and determining good fits, good retail fits for the city of Shelbyville. It would be totally non-committal until we got all the results back and brought it back to council within the coming meetings.
Any comments on that?
I believe this is the same kind of thing that the city did about 2 years ago with the Buxton Group, which launched us toward identifying Chick-fil-A, a couple of grocery stores, specific restaurants and that kind of thing. But now that the data is dated, I've been for spending that on an annual basis for a subscription to Buxton. I know the economic development people would love to have it as partnership.
Any other comment?
I'd be curious to know if the cities around us use the service.
Yes, sir. The company we most recently talked to was a company that represents Tullahoma. And they could not actively recruit on our behalf due to the exclusion zone from Shelbyville, Winchester, and Manchester. However, they could walk us right up to the door and give us opportunities, the elevator speeches, the retail leakage reports, and targeted commercial development.
Anyone else?
This would be for the city of Shelbyville and under our control.
Yes, sir.
And what's a ballpark on the cost of this?
It ranges, based on the informal discussions we've had, an annual cost of $25,000 to $35,000 a year, based on the company.
This is the same thing that Gary Fayard asked us for when he come ask for money for partnership. What he asked for extra money for this.
That was
Well,
more
same
guided.
thing, one, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
That was more guided toward the retail analysis
Oh.
report and retail leakage. This one, we're going to take it a step further and ask for guidance on retail recruitment, in addition to getting the data.
Okay,
that
this will
we
be,
need.
this will be for the city of Shelbyville, period.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any questions? Anyone else?
Do we actually have the, reins of perhaps going maybe 1 year, 2 years, or is this a particular, amount of time that we are committed?
It would be on a year-to-year basis with the two companies I've spoke to. And the council would have an option to renew. A prime example, Tullahoma started with this one company. I believe they said in like 2007, and they've renewed annually through 2023 and continue to do so.
Working for them. Any other comments?
So would this body actually see those RFQs? I mean, the qualifications and all of the information from the individuals, the entities?
Yes, ma'am, we can certainly share that with council.
Anyone else? All right, let's move to the next item on the agenda, the Shelbyville Bedford Partnership Funding. And I'll call on Mr. Collins, our city manager, to talk to us about that.
Mayor, this was a request from a council member to hold a study session discussion on the economic development.
Any discussion, Henry?
Yeah, I'll be happy to discuss it all day long. I'm the one that asked for it. Mainly because I keep getting confronted almost on a daily basis from concerned citizens asking, what is the reason for the city of Shelbyville not participating in the funding of the Shelbyville Partnership that bears our name and how we started it? And I have to look at them with a dumb look on my face saying, I really don't like to answer these inquiries with an expression of, I don't know, because I have asked several of the people that voted no. I've asked for meetings to explain why we're not giving the money, and I have been given 0 reasons. And so my point is not that I have received a good explanation. My emphasis is that I never received any explanation. And we had a vote in May saying that we weren't going to fund them in this budget year, yet we have the money in the hotel motel tax fund that is currently at what, 370,000 plus and rising to the estimate of this end of this year at way over $500,000 that's not being spent. We've refused to have a meeting to discuss it for whatever reason. So I hate to plead ignorant when people ask me these questions, but I literally have been given no reason, and I'm perplexed with the silence that I received from the people that voted against it. So I was hoping we could bring it back up now that the county has voted to fund it. The Chamber of Commerce is now merged with them. All the entities are in place except for the city of Shelbyville in this partnership. And I believe there's real synergies to be gained for what we want to see Shelbyville, what happens to Shelbyville's growth in the future, be a player in that and not be, it just doesn't make sense for us who benefit the most, the city of Shelbyville, that is, to be on the outside looking in. So, I've got a whole list of their accomplishments and that kind of thing over the literally, if you realize that, that organization's barely 2 years old. I think it was July 1st, 2021, when it was created. So in 2 years, to me, I've listed 20 different items here on my page that they've gotten accomplished. And the momentum is there. And why we don't at least give that $100,000 that match the counties. So I was hoping, begging, pleading, whatever, give an answer to the people why we're not funding. That was my point for bringing it up again. That is my request.
Thank you, Councilman Bellhouse. Any other member of the council have anything to say about that? Okay, thank you for your comments. Next item is environmental and noise assessment request. MTSU and Paul and Scott, I've got both of your names down here. Paul, would you move forward? This is our airport director, or director of
airports. As if we had multiple.
Thank you, Paul.
So, this is in reference to an environmental study that's been requested from FAA. It's all part of the move with MTSU's aerospace program. So with that, this study will cover the property that they'll be disturbing with construction, but also what they're asking for is also a noise analysis because of the fact that they're bringing in 40 plus airplanes all at one time. Well, FAA considers it at one time, even though it'll be transitioned over about a 5-year process. So they want to find out and get ahead of the process and see what's all involved in that. And it's been brought out, and you have a copy in there. MTSU is covering the cost of that project. It's $130,800. That estimate came from our engineer. So that is with, it would be done with the work order because it is our property. It is our consultant doing the work, but they'll be the ones that are taking care of the cost for that because based on some earlier comments from the council at times where MTSU will cover any of the costs associated with the move.
But they're not actually doing that upfront. The way I'm reading this is to be reimbursed.
That's correct.
So that means we pay it, they reimburse
Yes.
later.
And leave with that, probably, I know that there's been some discussion about having a memorandum of agreement or MOU, memorandum of understanding to make sure that the city and MTSU are on the same terms.
And we are. Aren't we, Jenny? I think, yes.
No, we haven't prepared that yet, but yes, we can. Yeah. And Dr. McPhee, of course, has already sent the letter that it says that MTSU will do the reimbursement, but I can create a memorandum on that issue.
Okay.
So have everybody sign.
Okay.
Any comment? Thank you, Mr. Perry. Next item is the Railroad Authority right-of-way proposal, Rails to Trails. Scott?
Mayor, the Railroad Authority has been for several years seeking to turn over the maintenance of the segments of their rail line to the city of Shelbyville for a potential Rails to Trails program. And we're kind of in a situation where they cannot take action until city council takes action. And we're somewhat hesitant to take action until they confirm that they can bank the properties, which means hold it for the city. In case the city puts in investment in it, it cannot be given over to adjoining property owners. We have asked staff to run some preliminary numbers on the cost of maintaining the lines as they are prior to the Rails to Trails creation. And it's provided on your iPads. The rough estimates would be in, startup costs, approximately $25,000-$30,000. And then the ongoing trails upkeep would evolve into needing a full-time park maintenance person, an additional mower, and a gator or ATV. That would be well down.
Some of that be, most of it be covered under a grant, is that correct, as far as if we do the rails to trail?
The only thing that'd be covered under a grant would be the trails themselves. All this is to do with maintenance and equipment that's needed.
What's happening there, folks, and you may not know as an audience, but the railroad, that we have from East Lane Street to Baker Street near National Head, okay? The railroad is wanting to give that to the city for us to make a rails to trails pathway for people to walk to the city of Shelbyville, or somebody that's in a wheelchair, or somebody that may be on a bicycle. I think they'll allow that on there, but we would have a pathway from those directions. That rail line actually goes all the way to Tyson, doesn't it? If I'm correct, Tyson Foods down there. But they'll take up the railroad authority would take up the rail and things like that. And then we would have a grant to help us on that, to make that a rails to trail. We think that would be good to get people moving again and being able to come into the city and walk in like that. And as we develop the city, that it would give an avenue for those things. The things, motorized vehicles, of course, be not allowed on that rails to trails. And it would be a safe pathway, we hope, for folks not having to walk on the street, things coming into the city.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to add to make clarification, because this is a right-of-way of the railroad authority, the actual ownership of the property basically remains with the railroad authority. It is banked, it's banked in Washington, D.C. One of the things that they'll have to do is go through a process and make certain that the Transportation Board approves that.
Right.
So understand, if for any reason in the future, it is determined that they need that back,
Right.
they get it back. I just want to make certain that you all understand that.
So we have a full-time employee and benefits and the cost of a gator and fuel and so forth to mow that strip, or that, how many miles is it roughly?
2 to 2.5.
Yeah.
So the rails will be gone, they'll take up the railroad ties too?
Yes, sir.
So, but we can't pave it.
Yes, we could pay.
Okay, which would eliminate all the poor.
With grant funding.
Right.
Okay, that would,
And there's very favorable grants.
Yeah, that would be-
Trails
okay.
project.
Okay.
And the need for an additional employee would be in the future. It's not an immediate cost.
Thanks.
Any other comments from council members or anyone? All right, let's move to the next item. And that is the Habitat for Humanity funding request. Scott, I'll come back to you.
Mayor, this is put on by the request of the council member, and information was requested and has since been received and emailed to each council.
Any comments, any thoughts on that?
Yes, I'm kind of curious to see if that breakdown of the wages received by the council, was that sufficient information?
It was for me.
Reviewing.
In fact, I was impressed. They really gave us too much information. They gave us a copy of their payroll. So I would personally not want that out there.
Oh,
That's really all I needed. Yeah, they put names and everything to that, but, so that was just something that they thought, because they are turning these people into, homeowners in that tax value. And with everything that's gone on, you know, that they're asking for this request.
Now, the building they were in, have they moved out of it? Are they still renting that building off the square? Do you know?
I am not for
That's all
sure.
moving stuff.
I am not for sure, but they are this close to having it empty. So I definitely anticipated previously that it would be the latter part of August,
Uh-huh.
but they're gonna be out of there just very quickly.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Thank you, Councilman Murphy.
I just need to know if council is interested in taking a vote on funding this, because I have to advertise it, which I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that, but anyway, that's a whole nother conversation that we're gonna get into in a minute, but I have to figure out a way if council is interested in taking a vote, and if they are, we won't be able to do it next week because it has to be advertised for so many days prior to the vote.
Any comments to our city recorder?
It's
Ms.
because
Smith?
it's a nonprofit. It's a nonprofit, so it has to be advertised in the newspaper. I think, is it 10 days? I believe it may be 15. I'm not sure.
I was thinking it was 7, but may I say, council could take a vote next week on whether they want to see a resolution to move forward.
Okay.
And that way,
You can put it
why
on
that basically, because we do have the issue with advertising, we could do that then in September.
Okay.
You're not gonna have a newspaper until August 16th.
Correct. So,
I would recommend that then the vote, what you would put on for next Thursday is that they're basically saying, yes, prepare us a resolution and go forward with advertising,
okay.
which you would have at your next meeting.
There'll be a business motion on your agenda to cover this item for you to vote yes or no on whether you want to see a resolution for it and me to advertise for it.
Thank you, Lisa. Anyone else?
I'm sorry. It was a sidebar. What did we choose to do?
There'll be a motion on your agenda next Thursday night to vote to have staff prepare a resolution for this item and advertise as necessary.
Thank you.
And then it would come back in front of you in September to actually pass a resolution granting them money. Understand? Because we can't add, right now you're stuck without a newspaper for a while. We'll talk about it in just a minute. We'll talk about it.
Do something, I mean, the previous councils and Henry, the previous councils chose some time for the council to get out of that. So we're gonna disregard what the previous councils, we need to do something. We might be opening the door for everybody in town to come in and want money. I don't know. I don't know how, I don't know. But we need to make sure.
You all will be giving us direction next week.
Yeah.
Of whether or not you truly want to consider, because what you'd be directing Scott, Lisa, your staff to do is to go ahead and prepare the resolution, put a dollar amount in it, and then Lisa has to meet the state law requirement on advertising when you are going to give money to a nonprofit. We can't avoid that requirement. We have to do it. Okay.
Any other comments? Clear, Lisa.
Sure.
All right, number 9, community clinic tourism funding request. Right?
Mayor, we've received 2 requests from the community clinic of Shelbyville and Bedford County Incorporated. The first request dated July 20th is requesting $5,000 from tourism to support their hosting a Miss Shelbyville Team, and Miss Shelbyville Princess Beauty Pageant. They state that the contestants must live in the state of Tennessee and be from the 95 counties. And the judges, contestants, and families will be staying in hotels. And again, they're requesting $5,000 from tourism to support this.
Everybody understand what Scott was saying there? You have it probably in front of you there. This is a funding thing for the planning. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes.
This is solely for a pageant, right?
That's
right.
If they have another request in too.
Well, this is just Miss Shelbyville. Most of our tourism dollars go for, hotel motel. When we give a funding for tourism, we're bringing folks into the hotel motel to get funds. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The Tennessee Hospitality Association defines it as putting heads
Right.
on beds.
But this will only be for Shelbyville,
Well, no,
contestants only. Is this correct?
No, sir. They're bringing in people from all 95 counties.
Oh, okay, good. Any other questions?
I'm kind of confused on that. If it's labeled Miss Shelbyville, and they're inviting statewide contestants.
That is, if you just let me jump in, that's common. You have people, that's in pageants everywhere. You don't necessarily have to be a resident. In the pageant circuit, that's very common.
Did they, by chance, give a breakdown as to how they're using or wanting to use those funds of 5,000?
No, ma'am. We provided you the letter of request that we received. That's all the information we have at this time.
Any thoughts, other thoughts?
What was the other request?
The other request in a letter dated also July 20th is requesting $5,000 for their celebration of providing limited dental and medical care for low-income and uninsured Bedford County adults. Governor Lee has been invited to the ceremony to provide the keynote speech. And their goal is to sell tickets in anticipation of there being out-of-state guests.
One time.
This don't make sense to me.
Everybody hear that?
Yeah, but
It's in that second letter there.
Both those events would virtually eat up half our tourism budget, or that we've got it budgeted for grants. Only budget 25,000 a year, that would be 10,000 to one organization.
That we just gave $30,000 on
just gave
a one-time basis.
Yeah, that was up to them to use it for the community clinic or the dental part, but we've done the $30,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as the 5,000 on the pageant, it might be a little steep now, because one part of the council, but.
What they're gonna use the funds for selling those tickets, those 248 tickets, that'll go to the clinic also, right? Did you read that in that last paragraph?
Sure.
The governor's gonna speak.
Their governor is being invited.
And I'm going back to the pageant for a minute. I mean, I mean, I don't get it. If I lived in Jackson, Tennessee, why would I want to be Mr. or Mrs. Shelbyville? It's just me.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, I noticed in Miss Cardin's letter, because that to me was the key, I just happen to have friends who have been, I have a friend who really went high in pageant, and she was Miss whatever all over the state of Mississippi. So it's very common for women who are in pageants to go around like that. And I noticed Ms. Carden's letter does state that the winner of the Miss Shelbyville pageant moves to the next level to compete for Miss Tennessee. And that was going to be a question of mine. Does this pageant qualify as basically as a qualifier to the Miss Tennessee? That's what I was wanting to know. And that would be the draw, Councilman Hale, is that it would be another avenue for someone to get to the Miss Tennessee pageant.
And what I was referring to was the second letter that we've got, and we should have it in front of you, where it's talking about the community clinic is celebrating 20 years of providing limited dental and medical care, and that's where the governor's going to speak. That he's going to be the keynote speaker for that on September the 9th, I believe, at First Baptist Church. So that was another, they were requesting $5,000 for that too, I think. What did you?
Told you, once it started,
Is that right? In that letter? Requesting another $5,000 for that, or?
I don't know what for.
Sorry. Yeah, that's from Ms. Love. All right.
So they received a $100,000 grant recently, wasn't it?
They did get a $100,000 grant from the state recently, that's correct.
So those funds couldn't go anywhere toward the dental?
All it goes to.
We gave
probably have to let
30,000, you know.
Ms. Smith or Scott know if we want to participate in either one of those, right?
They made
I
the
just-
request, we need to.
I just need to know if you want them on your agenda next week for vote. You want to
May
get
I
less
ask,
money?
may I ask another question? I'm sorry, can I ask another question for qualification? If you're talking about your pageant, is it happening on August 5th? Okay, just throwing out information, if this is the first one, you might want to see what happens and how many people from out of town actually apply.
That's in 4 days.
Also, and of course, I know things are all kind of different, but it used to be for tourism grants, you had to use them for advertising outside of the Shelbyville area. That was, like, you had to use a portion of that money for advertising outside the Shelbyville area. So I don't, think that would really apply in this, since we're not gonna vote until after the event took place. But that's just, a little bit of information from history.
Mayor, the chair and city council consider a recommendation from city management and staff. Can we freeze any and all requests like this until a clear policy guideline can be developed on or before October?
Absolutely.
Okay, specify, are you saying, for nonprofits or tourism dollars?
From the tourism fund, yes, ma'am. And those, some have already been approved that will be coming up in September and October. But this would be based on any new applications for tourism fund.
I agree to that.
Yep.
Because Henry's, Councilman Feldhouse had mentioned the fact that, he kind of pinpointed where the dollars were. I don't even know. What everybody's grabbing and
Exactly.
stuff and a little here, a little there.
Exactly right.
I've said many times before, when you get into this battle, you're gonna have it every month.
That's right.
We need a tourism policy. I was for letting the, partnership again handle it through their tourism proposal that they made, or somebody to handle it. Let them take the money and process or take the applications and process it, and then make recommendations to us. Because we as elected officials, we're gonna be inundated every month. It's too easy to come pigeonhole an elected official. Well, I'll vote for you. I want you to take this to the council and propose that I get $1,000, $2,000. But now it's $5,000 and $10,000 out of a very limited pot of money that was established for these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a reason we passed a few years ago that we're gonna eliminate nonprofits altogether, that we were not gonna pay any nonprofits.
That's why y'all did what you did and it worked. It did
worked.
exactly what
Get-
you phased them out so much a year and it worked.
But we reversed it a few months ago and gave $30,000.
Yep.
Once you do it,
The door's
It's
back
easy
open.
to creep back in.
Yeah. Any other comment?
So I'm getting a consensus from the council that these two items are gonna be taken off. You don't want to see them to vote on them. And we're gonna freeze, and I guess I would have to put that on the agenda, a motion to freeze all requests for tourism funds
I
until
think you-
policies established.
I think you do have a business item, yes, that they vote to freeze requests.
Thank you.
On tourism dollars.
On tourism.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Tourism grant funds, we should put it that way, tourism grant funds.
Right. Okay. Any other thoughts? All right, let's move to old business, ordinances, second and final reading, public hearing, and amendment to the Fieldstone Planned Unit Development, PUD pattern book to add 5 residential units, remove the clubhouse, and, remove the commercial portion close to the eastern entrance of the PUD along Highway 231 North. Any questions on that? Waleed's here to answer all the questions.
There's been no changes since the first reading, no changes.
Planning commission.
We're good. Is it approved? I mean, as far as.
Yeah. Planning-
Yeah, the planning commission gave a favorable recommendation.
Any questions, thoughts? Waleed's here.
Just keep it back there.
his ladies,
All right. All right, the next item, new business, ordinances, first reading, amend the municipal code related to publication requirements of meetings. Well, that's new state law, started July the 1st. Any thoughts on that, Ginger?
Yeah, Mayor, if you don't mind, I asked administration to put this on here because there are several things in your current municipal code that either don't comply with current state law or are difficult now to comply with on notices of meetings, particularly since our local newspaper has reduced its publication. And so I just wanted to have a discussion with you all. And as I told Scott and Lisa, we would have to make this an ordinance change. And so Lisa put it on there. As I've now been working on it in the past couple of weeks, I'm not sure we'll have it ready for you all next week because there's so many other things that are moving parts. And one of them is that we just found out late this afternoon some more information about the publication schedule and what's happening with the Shelbyville Times Gazette, which is will no longer be an entity. It will no longer exist. And I'll let Lisa tell you more about it, but very quickly, the things that I think we need to change very early on in your municipal code, and this will get complicated, and I'm very sorry, but we have to comply with a variety of notice requirements. And I need to make certain you understand the difference between a notice of a meeting and a notice of what's on the agenda of a meeting and the notice of a public hearing. All of those are different things. And how Lisa works with that can be very complicated. You all now know that the state does require us to publish, and I call it publish, but it's really just provide the agenda of all your meetings now 48 hours in advance. And fortunately, the state does not require us to put that in a newspaper. Doesn't have to be. We can put it on the website. That's under the Open Meetings Act. The Open Meetings Act does require us to publish a notice that a meeting is taking place. I'm not saying what's on the meeting, I'm saying that a meeting is taking place, and it's called adequate notice. It doesn't tell us how to do it, but your municipal code says that you have to do it in the newspaper of general circulation. Not only your regular meetings, but all special call meetings. That has become significantly difficult in the past couple of years because of the reduction in publication in the Shelbyville Times-Gazette. It's my recommendation that we remove that from your code. Now, there's a caveat to that. There are a ton of things that still require publication in a newspaper of general circulation. There are a lot of things. So I would like for your administration to sit down, work out what all those options will be, and bring that back to you. I just think in general, though, requiring that a notification of just a meeting in which there's no special other requirement under state law for us to put it in the newspaper, it significantly jams you all up about when you can have a meeting. It really does. Now, how we go about doing our hearings. Yeah. For example, you all right now, as a matter of practice, you all have a public hearing on all your ordinances. That is not an actual legal requirement, not on all your ordinances. But the list of ordinances under state law that you have to have a public hearing, and you have to put that notice of public hearing in a newspaper. I mean, it's a significant law. So I know why that practice was developed. You cover it. If you have a public hearing on everything, you're fine. But given what's going on with the Times-Gazette, it's gonna be even harder now. So I'm gonna shut up now and let Lisa tell you what we know about the newspaper.
Lisa, would you enlighten?
Yes, I emailed Deandra Womble this morning. She was the general manager and editor of the Times-Gazette. She informed me they were supposed to go back to publishing today. And she sent me this today that said, due to legal matters with past ownership, they will no longer be the Shelbyville Times-Gazette or the Marshall County Tribune. On August the 16th for Shelbyville and the 17th for Lewisburg, they will be starting a new newspaper. They will have the same employees, but it will be under a new name and a new ownership. They said that the old ownership just came in, fired everybody, and decided not to continue once the building sold. And so there is no longer a Shelbyville Times-Gazette, but because of legal issues, they can't use that name. They will begin publishing. The plan is to begin publishing on the 16th for Shelbyville, but that's a Wednesday publication. And they'll only be publishing to begin with 1 day a week. They hope that within 2 to 3 weeks, they'll be able to go to 2 days a week, which is what we were down to begin with. They say they're going to work diligently to build the paper back up, that, we deserve to have a hometown newspaper, and they have great employees who want to see this through, so that is their intent, but right now, that's the situation. So nothing will be printed until August 16th.
And Lisa, I think they said that, in terms of subscriptions, the new newspaper really, it's not going to honor past Times-Gazette subscriptions.
The new newspaper has no existing subscriptions. Those were owned by Holler Media, who previously owned the Times-Gazette. And they said they do have some information about where you could go for refunds if you had a subscription and you wanted to try to get a refund on the unused portion of it. So I've got that. If anybody wants to contact me concerning that issue. Otherwise, that's basically it.
I'm really discouraged about that. Our hometown newspaper is very important to any community. Hopefully they'll get it back up running and get some funds they need for advertising and things to get it going. Anything else you ladies need to say about the publications of meetings?
Well,
Anybody in
Mayor,
the council have a question?
I was just sort of trying to get a feel from council if they want us to go ahead and start drafting that type of an ordinance for y'all's consideration.
Yes.
I think we need to do it.
Okay. Well, good,
I think so.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions about that? Resolution. A resolution authorizing and directing the city treasurer to bar, discharge, and deem uncollectible all outstanding city property taxes after the lapse of 10 years from April 1st of the year following the year in which such taxes become delinquent as outlined in PCA 67-5.1806. Kay, would you like to discuss that, or is there any question?
Right, and then Ginger may want to step in, but, the auditors had brought this up to me. I don't think the city used to periodically, maybe annually or every 2 or 3 years, delete taxes from the rolls that, are over 10 years old. Because after that time, there's no longer a lien where we can go after the property. Now, we would still be glad to collect taxes on from anybody that wants to still pay them.
Except the money.
Yeah, I don't know what I said.
Said collect. We wouldn't go after, we can't go after it, but they can voluntarily pay it.
We'll take it.
We'll
Yes.
take it.
And I'll deposit it. But we would remove it from our books. It would no longer show as an accounts receivable. So that's just kind of a cleanup. And, you know, after we kind of catch this up, then maybe we could just start doing this once a year for one tax year. Like next year, we'd do it for taxes 2012. So it's not really losing us any money. It's just taking it off the books as a receivable. Did I say that right, Ginger?
No, that's exactly correct. Usually these are personal property taxes, not real property taxes that we're not being able to, usually it's businesses that closed or whatever, we've not been able to collect through the tax sale.
I looked at all of them individually, and you're right, it's like 98% personal property. A few were bankruptcies. One was something under appeal, I think, but then that got settled. But yes, the vast majority of personal property.
We used to do it like every 2 or 3 years, do that resolution to clean it up.
Any questions for Kay? Doing a good job, Kay. Okay, next item, Shelbyville Power, Water, and Sewage Board Resolution. Ginger?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I will go ahead and prepare a resolution that outlines, as I've spoken to you all before, about defining for you all the position of a member of the board of power system, ratepayer, what your all's intentions are. I'll prepare you a resolution directing that type of policy, and it'll be up to you all, of course, whether you want to change that or not at this time, or accept it at this time. And whether, if you go ahead and accept it, if you want to make that effective at this time. I do continue to stand behind that you all are going to also have to change your charter. I know very well what we had talked about. It's not what their intent was. That's not what we want to continue. But I will have that resolution for you. We can have that further discussion next Thursday night about whether or not you want to go ahead and pass it.
Any discussion there? Any thoughts from anybody? Okay. Next item is the Tennessee Placemakers Entrepreneurship Grant. Scott?
Thank you, sir. This is a grant offered by the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. It is a $5,000 grant, 100% no match, to help local small businesses through a year. Yes, didn't I say that?
No, you said 5.
I'm sorry, I've got 5,000 on the brain. It is $55,000.
Yeah, right. It wasn't so many people.
No match involved. And some of the eligible activities would be to determine gaps in the community and ways to close them, which may include but not limited to retail development, tourism, agribusiness, co-working spaces, commercial kitchen incubators, etc. They also go on to help businesses with seasonal advertising and other items. Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development partner with Retail Strategies and other similar entities to help put on this program.
That's like a good idea. Scott had just got finished with the facade grants for our folks around the square there, merchants around the square, and I think 21 or 22 of the businesses took advantage of that, and you're seeing all kinds of changes. Painting those buildings, putting awnings up and all that, making our square look very nice. So, Scott did a great job on that, and I think, our partnership folks, Kelly and, Beth helped a little bit on that too.
It is great teamwork across the board.
Great. Looks good, and the merchants, I think, are all pleased with that. Thank you so much for that. Any questions on that grant, that $50,000 grant?
Is this something for individuals to apply for, or is the city applying for it to administer?
The city will apply for it and then coordinate with Retail Strategies, who will actually administer it.
Questions?
Sounds like something else on your plate.
This one's a handoff, sir.
It's a handoff? Okay.
Okay. Further questions? The next item, business item, and it's, the, hangar rates. Paul? That's for the airplanes, right?
Access for the storage.
Not hangars for,
Storage.
closet.
Currently, you have 30 T hangars at your airport, and their existing rate is $315 a month. Right now, the airport authority has looked to increase that rate. It was last increased 2 years ago. So they're looking to increase it over time. They would like to eventually get to $430, but they want to do it over 2 years. So they're looking at increasing it Scott's got me messing up. $57.50 to increase it to $372.50 per month. They're trying to make this do a market adjustment with the increases. It would happen the next year, go up another $57.50 to make it to finally get to the $430. And then the idea from that point forward is to build in a 3% market adjustment each year. So that way they don't have to continue to come back to you and make those market adjustments. They feel like when they get to the $430, it'll be at the market rate, and that way it can adjust with inflation at that point in time. Just establishing that way everybody knows each year that their rent will go up 3%.
I think their intent was for it to go up $57.50 this year, and then a year from that day, $57.50 and the 3% escalation clause at that time, and then annually the 3% escalation clause.
And that's probably pretty competitive with most.
Yes, we did an extensive analysis of everything, all the airports within a 50 nautical mile radius, plus we even looked at storage units and boat slips. So we looked at everything that stores anything of any significant size, and just to give the authority the full amount of data as possible. Took advantage of a summer intern we have he made a lot of phone calls.
Thank you, Paul. Any
Paul, do
questions?
you have a waiting list?
Yes, sir, we have over 100 people on the waiting list.
Do you have some hangars occupied by planes that won't fly?
There is maybe one that is under construction right now. Other than that, we've been slowly making sure that that's taken care of. Now, can I tell you that there's other things in those hangars? Yes, but they do have flying airplanes in those, except for that one that has one under construction. And we check in with him regularly to make sure he is making some progress. He's making slow progress. He's making some.
Good.
Thanks.
Good job, Paul. Thank you. What you do at the airport for. All right, purchasing and bid items. Ms. Lloyd, will you come forward, please? I believe we have a statewide contract purchasing report for July.
Yes, this has to do with vehicles we purchased that were in the 24 capital budget. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for giving us the flexibility to order statewide contract vehicles when they become available, because it made the difference in these cars we bought, and they're already here and on the ground. All except well, I'll say the 4 police department cars are, but the street departments, it is here. It's not
This month.
August, yeah, sorry, got too much going on in my brain. It's in the paragraph, if I would just read it. The following purchases were issued in July for vehicles budgeted in the FY '24 capital. 2 2023 Ford F-150 police responders and 2 Ford Police Interceptors. This is 4 of the 6 vehicles in this year's budget. The total on the police department for the 4 vehicles was $201,088. Their budget for 6 is $375,575. So we're well within their budget figures. And like I said, they're here and already on the ground and in use. The street department, we ordered one 2023 Ford F-350 chassis with dump body. And this one was approved in the budget for $75,000. They also have a rollover in the budget of $68,140 for an order placed in November of last year with Ford of Murfreesboro. That most likely will not be filled this year per the vendor, and I have an email from the vendor stating that. Lonnie Cobb Ford in Henderson, who is also a statewide contract vendor, has this truck listed above, landing at their lot in August. So between the rollover amount and the FY '24 budget, this purchase is covered. Any questions on those? And I will say for the police department, part of their last year orders arrived this month as well. So we're slowly getting in the vehicles that have been on backlog for over 6-9 months. Any questions on that one?
Okay. Next item is a mini excavator purchase for the Public Works Stormwater Management Division.
Yes, sir. This is utilizing the Sourcewell National Cooperative. This will be an item on your August 10th agenda to purchase a Bobcat E60 R2 Series compact excavator. Total price $110,523.38. We recommend utilizing the Sourcewell contract. The capital fund for this item was $115,000. And I will say in the Public Works capital fund, with the savings on this Bobcat, we've already covered the FY '24 overage on the truck with dump body. So we still had the rollover, but with this savings here, it made up the difference.
Good. Well,
Yes, sir.
next item, emergency purchase for a VEC System 7 chemical controller for the indoor pool.
Yes, sir. It has been, I think it was 2020, the last time we had to bring an emergency purchase to you all. The rec center experienced a failure of their BEC system in their indoor pool mechanical room. This is a chemical controller that controls all functionality of pool chemicals and backwash. The replacement controller, once ordered, required a 2-week lead time. Parks and Rec staff requested emergency status, and City Manager Collins authorized the emergency purchase July 19th. The Parks and Rec staff are manually checking and administering chemicals, which is very labor intensive, trying to avoid closing the pool. The replacement controller was ordered from Cass TN Inc. of Venor, Tennessee for $15,977.78. 3 vendors were contacted. Cass TN was the only one that met our need for both controller and installation. Our purchasing policies allow for emergency purchases, pages 3 and 4 of the policy, with subsequent approval by the governing body, and only when normal functions and operations of the department are expected to be interrupted or in which property, equipment, or life is endangered through unexpected circumstances and an immediate need of an emergency nature exists. This will be an agenda item August the 10th for you all for your subsequent approval. The Parks and Rec staff, as far as the economic impact, they requested the repairs be covered in their general fund, rec center building repairs account 266. The FY annual budget amount in that account for the year is $90,240. There is a possibility, once the technician removes old controller and analyzes, that this may have been caused by a weather event. We had a power outage during that time. If that is the case, this will become an insurance claim at that time.
An options to renew, photography services for youth sport league with 2 one-year options for renewal.
Yes, sir. The original bid was awarded last summer at the July 14th meeting to Mac Brown Photographers. This award included 2 annual options for renewal. This is the first of 2. Mac Brown Photographers agrees to renew for 1 year, August 11th, 2023 through August 10th of next year, with the following changes. They're adjusting their return of total sales to the city from 20% to 15% in order to keep package prices for our patrons the same. They will continue to give 2 complimentary team pictures for coaches and a plaque for the team sponsor. And this will also be on the August 10th agenda.
Big sit down there, economic impact of the city, people think of play. Like, you know, Lord said, director.
I have the one we added.
Oh, you have another one?
Yes.
Oh, no. Is it the option to?
Yes, option to renew the paving bid. My apologies that this is getting to you all at the last minute. I should have had this a month ago. A lot of life has happened, and I just made the sent the letter to Wrights. They responded very promptly. They were awarded the paving of city streets bid June 10th, 2021 for 1 year. This award included an option to renew annually for up to 2 years upon agreement of both parties. The city council awarded the first annual renewal last June 2022 with price increases I've listed in this staff summary in the left-hand column. Wright Paving responded for the second and final annual renewal with pricing below. I won't call out all these numbers, but as you all can see, there's been significant increases, very significant last year that we approved because of the way the world this time last year. And again, this year we have significant increases. Not as high as last year, but if you add them together over the course of 2 years, it's quite a bit. The Public Works Director and I have reservations about the significant price increases over both years. The hope in my department is that bids which contain annual option for renewals see very little change in the 3-year period. And I can't say that that is true for this one. The Public Works staff has created a new paving bid document after collaborating with some other cities. This document streamlines our pricing structure and also increases the products and services available, such as curb in place, corrugated pipe in place, concrete curb ramps, and small quantity sidewalk installation. All these items may be part of road construction and resurfacing that ultimately we've experienced that they can hold up a paving project if not managed by and with the paving contractor. We recommend rejecting and rebidding with new bid document if the council so wills. This is your decision. This could hopefully be accomplished and brought back to you at the September meeting if you so will. This will be an agenda item August the 10th. And our economic impact in this is we want to make sure that we have the best price for these services. And if you have any questions, but Glad is in the room. He knows a lot more about paving than I do, but I do recognize some pretty substantial price increases. And I'm not afraid to put out a bid and come back to you in a month and see if we can do better.
Good.
So.
Okay, good job.
Great work, Ms. Seth. Thank you, Bob, for your work. It's a continual issue. Continual issue. Okay, the appointments is the next item, and the library board, we've got some openings on that, we just don't have anyone, so we're gonna defer that to another meeting, probably, Lisa.
Well, I hope that you'll be able to make the appointments.
Okay, all right. Any other business anybody has? Any announcements that you might need to make? I'm having a birthday next week. I'll have a motion to adjourn, or I'm just gonna say we should do adjourn.
All right, Amy Lee. Amy.
Goodness. We don't get paid.